Hi everyone, Mrs. Olson here. Today's lesson is titled Wanted, a Just Right Government. Now, does that remind you of any fairy tales? Just right? Anyways, we'll get into that a little bit later. So we've been in our module titled Road to the Constitution. So the United States technically is not the United States during the colonial period. We are a colony of Britain. And so the colonists have been trying to figure out how to break away from England. We're going to start with our learning target right here. It reads, explain how the Constitution was designed to provide the United States with a stronger national government, so one that governed across the country, while remaining flexible enough to meet the changing circumstances of the growing nation. So the Constitution, when they were writing it, they were trying to figure out a way to essentially make everyone in the country happy, but still make it a document, still make laws that were strong enough to be upheld. Okay, so I am going to go into the reading document first. I've got it pulled up right here. And I better scroll back to the top. Okay, so here, this subheading says, independent citizens seek awesome government. So it's just kind of a play on words. So it's just kind of a play on some words. Independent citizens seek awesome government, like a want ad. And so the first part of this, we can kind of get a preview. They wanted a government that has enough power to do its job, so one that would not falter under pressure. Doesn't give anyone too much power, so we want a strong government, but we don't want one that is like a king and they can tell us what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and we don't have any say in it. So doesn't give anyone too much power, considers the needs of all states, so we don't want any one state to have precedence over another state. Let citizens have a say, so everybody has a voice. Remember that when you're 18, you're able to vote in this country. And then the last one says protects individual rights. So remember, where many of these colonists were coming from in England, their personal, their individual rights didn't always matter, especially if they weren't part of the nobility, okay? Continuing on, I'm going to fast forward just a little bit to the Articles of Confederation, and this reads that the Articles of Confederation explain how the 13 states would be governed as one nation. So here we go. Here are the basics. Each state was independent and had its own government. So even though Washington wasn't a state at this period in time, let's take what we already know. In Washington state, we have representatives that go to Olympia, and there is a governor of the state of Washington. And so in that respect, that is the example of the own government portion of this statement, okay? Each state would send representatives to the Congress of the Confederation, a lawmaking body. So we have 2 senators from the state of Washington that go to Washington, D.C. that represent the state of Washington. Third bullet, Congress was the only branch of government. We'll get more into that later, but that was one of the original ideas. And then in Congress, each state got 1 vote. So these are 2 early ideas, and you will see as we keep learning that these are going to change just a little bit because it wasn't exactly fair. Okay, continuing on, a rocky start. Now, on purpose, I put the pros of the Articles of Confederation and then the cons or the negatives of the Articles of Confederation. Okay, so pay attention to both of those pieces. Now we get into this portion where it says lots of differences. So, one, states had different needs. So, for example, some states depended on fishing while others grew mostly crops. Each state is going to make money in different ways. Sometimes the weather, as maybe you've paid attention to the news, sometimes the weather wreaks havoc, and those states, which maybe have hurricanes or tsunamis or earthquakes, they might need a little bit more money or a little bit more attention than other states who haven't gone through something like that. So each state had different needs. States had different sizes. Now, we're not necessarily talking about land size, we're talking about the amount of people. So when we get into voting, we'll be able to understand a little bit more about why the different populations in each state are going to make a difference. And then here's the third one, people had different opinions. Well, we're all humans and everybody's got an opinion. And sometimes opinions don't mesh, so there wasn't always an easy solution to come up with that made everybody happy. Okay, moving on. So they decided to come up with the Constitutional Convention. So it's a meeting of the minds, so to speak. Here in Philadelphia, there were a whole bunch of guys, there were no ladies, sorry, there were a whole bunch of guys that came up with a way to fix the articles, right? And so that turned into, we just kind of skim a little bit, the Constitution of the United States. All right, now we are at this middle portion that is titled Voting in Congress. Yes, it's a big deal. Now, I am going to read this word for word and hopefully explain a little bit as we go along, okay? So it says why? Because some states have a large population and some states have a small population. Under the Articles of Confederation, each state got one vote, no matter how many people it had. Now, guys, that's going to be a big deal because if you get one vote per state and that vote counts in Washington, D.C., you might think that's a little bit unfair if you're one of those big states with a lot of people. A lot of people are going to have a lot of voices, okay? So keep that in mind. This reads, that meant that people in large states had less influence in Congress. Naturally, large states thought this wasn't fair. They thought that they could get more votes because they had more people. Small states, however, thought it was a pretty good deal. Well, yeah, you probably would if you were a small state. Even though they were small, they had the same amount of power and influence as large states. They wanted to keep a one vote per state system. Okay, so we're going to back up just a little bit. We also have representatives from the state of Washington that are sent to Washington, D.C. to represent us here in the state of Washington. So we're going to learn how Congress was divided into two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, this part of your reading is going to make sense more with the House of Representatives. Because what happens is that in the House, we get to send, we as in the states, we get to send a number of representatives based on our population, okay? So the more people that a state has, the more representatives they get to send to Washington, D.C. Okay, so here is the Virginia plan. It proposed that the number of state senators and representatives be based on population versus the New Jersey plan that proposed that each state have the same number of senators and representatives. Now, I kind of gave you a spoiler alert in that what we have today within Congress is the House of Representatives based on the number of population, and then the Senate, which is the same number, 2 people from each state that are sent to DC. Okay. And the last part, it says the Constitution solution. They finally reached a compromise. And here is where your reading explains the House of Representatives and also the Senate. All right. Pause. Let's take a breath and switch over to the assignment. Okay. Again, I'm going back to the top. So your learning target's always at the top. Okay, let's start with the entry task. It says, please respond to the prompt in several sentences. State your opinion and support it with information you have learned previously. So to answer this prompt, what you will do is go back 2 lessons to Hey King, and you're going to use that information to answer this. So state your opinion, that's going to be sentence number 1, and support it with information you've learned previously. So you're going to pick out details, specifics from the Hey King lesson to back up your opinion that you state in sentence number 1. So probably 2 to 3, 4 sentences total for this entry task. If you want to go further than that, you totally can. So it says, considering the government under which the colonists had spent their lives, why do you think the writers of the articles wanted such a weak government? So you have to remember, you have to learn why the colonists left England, what their lives were like in England, and what they were hoping for in the United States. So always write with complete sentences and in a different color or font, so it makes it easy for my eyes to differentiate between your response and then my question. Okay, I'm going to skip these 2 parts because I think you can answer those by yourself. Number 3 says, I'd like you to pick apart the section titled A Rocky Start. So you're going to go sentence by sentence and rewrite the main ideas in list form. So for this one, I promise you won't get in trouble. For this one, you can actually do bullets and not write with complete sentences. Okay? And then I am going to scroll down to number 11. And the last part, number 11, it says cause and effect. Below are 2 cause statements, and then use the reading to write the effects of these causes. So the first one says, many former colonists feared losing their freedom to a new government. This was a cause which had an effect. So I'm going to help you a little bit and switch over to the reading. At the top of the second page, in this little portion right here, that's where you are going to find the effect of colonists being afraid that they would lose their freedom. Okay? And then the second cause reads, the legislature created by the Articles of Confederation gave equal power to large and small states. And then switching back over here, you are going to find the cause underneath this portion right here. All right, guys, that is the end of this lesson. Wanted a just right government, and going back to what we talked about earlier, did anybody guess Goldilocks? Trying on all of these different ideas to help them govern their country. All right, hopefully you learned a little bit, and let's see what you can turn in. Bye.